What happens when a beloved actress sits down for what should be a simple morning chat, only to face the most disrespectful interrogation of her entire career? In just 42 seconds, one talk show host's shocking comment would turn a friendly interview into the most explosive walkout British television has ever witnessed. The studio lights were warm that morning. Miriam Margolyes settled into the plush chair across from Lorraine Kelly, expecting the usual pleasant banter about her latest projects. The veteran actress had done hundreds of interviews over her decades-long career. She knew the routine: smile, share a few anecdotes, promote whatever project brought her to the studio, and leave on good terms. But this morning would be different. Sitting alongside Lorraine on the panel were regular contributors: Sarah, a lifestyle columnist, and James, an entertainment reporter. They flanked the host like sentries, notebooks in hand, ready to chime in with their own questions. The cameras rolled. The audience watched from home, sipping their morning tea, unaware they were about to witness something unprecedented. Lorraine opened with her signature bright smile. "Miriam, wonderful to have you here. Now, I want to dive right in because I've been dying to ask you something." Miriam nodded graciously. "Of course, dear. Fire away." "Your recent comments about younger actors," Lorraine began, her tone shifting slightly. "Some people are saying you've become a bit bitter, a bit out of touch. Would you say that's fair?" The studio went quiet. Miriam's eyebrows raised. It was an unusually pointed opening, especially for a show known for its light, friendly atmosphere. "I'm sorry, bitter," Miriam replied, her voice calm but with an edge. "I've simply been honest about the state of the industry. If honesty is now considered bitterness, then perhaps we need to examine our relationship with truth." Sarah jumped in, her voice syrupy sweet, but laced with something sharper. "But Miriam, don't you think there's a way to be honest without being quite so harsh? Some of the things you've said have really hurt people." Miriam turned to face Sarah directly. "Hurt people? I've spent 60 years in this business. I've earned the right to have an opinion. When I see talent being overlooked for Instagram followers, when I see craft being replaced by clicks, yes, I speak up. That's not harshness. That's caring about something I've dedicated my life to." Lorraine leaned forward, and there was something in her expression that wasn't quite friendly anymore. "See, this is exactly what people are talking about. This superiority complex. As if your generation had all the answers and everyone else is just playing dress up." The words hung in the air like poison. Miriam's face remained composed, but those watching closely could see the tightening around her eyes. "Superiority complex?" Miriam repeated slowly. "Lorraine, I'm not sure where this hostility is coming from, but I came here to discuss my work, not to be psychoanalyzed by someone who reads questions off a teleprompter for a living." A collective gasp rippled through the studio crew. James shifted uncomfortably in his seat, looking between the two women as tension crackled like electricity. Lorraine's smile became fixed, plastic. "Well, that's lovely. Very professional of you, Miriam. Tell me, do you treat everyone with this much contempt, or am I just special?" "Contempt?" Miriam's voice rose slightly. "You invited me here, asked me a loaded question designed to make me look bad, and now you're playing the victim when I defend myself? This is extraordinary." Sarah tried to interject, her voice nervous now. "Ladies, perhaps we should—" No, let her finish," Lorraine cut her off, waving a dismissive hand. "Miriam clearly has things she needs to get off her chest. The floor is yours." Miriam took a breath, visibly attempting to steady herself. "I don't need your permission to speak, Lorraine. What I need is basic respect. When I agreed to come on this program, I expected a conversation, not an ambush." "An ambush?" Lorraine laughed, but it was cold. "You're being asked perfectly reasonable questions. If you can't handle a little pushback, maybe you should stick to scripts where you can control what everyone says." James finally spoke up, his voice hesitant. "Lorraine, I think maybe we should move on to, I'm conducting this interview, James, Lorraine snapped without looking at him. Her eyes stayed locked on Miriam. Now, Miriam, let's talk about your age. You're 78 years old. Don't you think it's time to step back and let younger voices have their turn? Surely you've said everything you have to say by now. The studio fell into a shocked silence. Even Sarah looked horrified. The camera operators exchanged glances. This had crossed a line, and everyone knew it. Miriam's face went through a journey of emotions. Shock, hurt, anger, they all flickering across her features in the span of seconds. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but carried the weight of pure steel. My age, she said softly. You're going to sit there, on national television, and suggest that I should disappear because of my age? That I have nothing left to contribute, because I've lived longer than you find convenient? Lorraine shrugged, actually shrugged, as if she'd merely commented on the weather. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. There comes a time when we all need to know when our moment has passed. Maybe yours was 10 years ago, and you just didn't notice. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. James looked down at his notes, clearly wishing he could disappear. The studio crew stood frozen, unsure whether to keep filming or intervene. Miriam stood up slowly, is deliberately removing her microphone. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice didn't waver. In 60 years of working in this industry, she began, her words measured and precise, I have never, and I mean never, been spoken to with such flagrant disrespect. I've worked with the greatest directors, the finest actors, and yes, even the most challenging personalities. But you, Lorraine, have managed to achieve something truly remarkable. You've shown me that cruelty doesn't require talent. It just requires a platform and an absence of decency. Lorraine's smile finally cracked. Oh, don't be so dramatic. You're perfectly fine to dish it out, but can't take it when... When what? Miriam interrupted, her voice rising now. When someone uses my age as a weapon? When someone suggests I'm worthless because I've had the audacity to live a long life? Is that what I'm supposed to just take? You're being oversensitive, Lorraine said, but her voice had lost some of its confidence. It was just a question. It was an insult, Miriam corrected sharply, wrapped in a question mark, to give you plausible deniability. But we both know exactly what you meant, and so does everyone watching. James tried once more to diffuse the situation. Perhaps we could all just take a breath, and... I don't need to take a breath, James, Miriam said, not unkindly. What I need to do is leave. Because staying here, in this toxic environment, would suggest that I accept this treatment. And I don't. I never will. Lorraine's face flushed red. You can't just walk out. You were in the middle of a live broadcast. Watch me, Miriam replied simply. She began gathering her things. Her handbag. Her coat draped over the back of the chair. Lorraine's voice turned sharp, almost desperate. You're proving my point, you know. Can't handle a real conversation, so you run away. Very mature. Miriam paused, turning back to face the host one final time. A real conversation requires two people engaging in good faith. What you've done here today isn't conversation. It's bullying. And the saddest part? You don't even see it. You genuinely believe that tearing someone down makes good television. I'm doing my job, Lorraine shot back. Asking difficult questions. If you can't cope with that, difficult questions? Miriam's laugh was harsh. Difficult questions challenge ideas, provoke thought, illuminate truth. What you asked wasn't difficult. It was cruel. There's a difference, though I suspect you're incapable of recognizing it. Sarah finally found her voice again. Miriam, I'm sure Lorraine didn't mean... Oh, she meant it, Miriam said quietly. Every word. She meant to diminish me, to make me feel small and irrelevant. The question is why? What did I do to deserve this? I came here in good faith. I showed up on time. I was prepared to be gracious and warm and give your viewers a pleasant few minutes of entertainment. Instead, I get this." Lorraine stood up now too, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You've been criticizing everyone and everything for months. Did you think there would be no consequences? That you could just say whatever you want and everyone would smile and nod?" "I've been expressing opinions," Miriam countered, "which, last I checked, was still allowed in this country. But apparently, on your show, only your opinions matter. Only your perspective is valid. Anyone who disagrees gets attacked and humiliated." "That's not true," Lorraine protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it?" Miriam challenged. "Then explain to me what purpose your comment about my age served. What insight did it provide? What value did it add to this discussion? Or was it simply meant to hurt me?" Lorraine opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time since the interview began, she seemed at a loss for words. James spoke softly. "Maybe we should all just calm down." "I am calm," Miriam said, and she was. Remarkably calm given the circumstances. "What I am not is willing to be demeaned for your entertainment. I've spent my entire career fighting for respect in an industry that often withholds it from women, from older people, from anyone who doesn't fit a narrow mold. I didn't fight all those battles just to sit here and accept this garbage." "Garbage?" Lorraine's voice went shrill. "You're calling my show garbage?" "I'm calling your treatment of me garbage," Miriam clarified. "There's a distinction. This show could be wonderful. It often is, from what I understand. But today, with me, you chose cruelty. You chose to use your position to punch down at someone who came here as your guest. That's garbage behavior, yes." The producer's voice crackled through someone's earpiece. Bodies shifted off camera. This was spiraling beyond anyone's control. Sarah made one more attempt. "Perhaps if we all just apologized and started fresh." "Apologized?" Lorraine whirled on her. "Why should I apologize? For doing my job? For asking questions the public wants answered? The public wants to see you berate a 78-year-old woman about her age?" Miriam asked incredulously. "Really? That's what they tune in for?" "I rather doubt that, Lorraine. I think that's what you want, for reasons I can't begin to fathom." Lorraine's jaw clenched. "You think you're so much better than everyone else, so much smarter, so much more talented. Well, here's a newsflash. You're just another actress past her prime, desperately clinging to relevance." The words detonated in the studio like a bomb. Even Lorraine seemed shocked by what she'd just said. Her eyes widened slightly, as if her own mouth had betrayed her. Sarah actually gasped out loud this time. "Lorraine, that's completely uncalled for." "Stay out of this, Sarah," Lorraine snapped, not taking her eyes off Miriam. "No, I won't stay out of it," Sarah said, her voice trembling but determined. "This has gone way too far. Miriam is our guest. She deserves respect." James nodded vigorously. "Sarah's right. This whole interview has been completely inappropriate." Lorraine whirled on both of them. "Are you both questioning how I run my show? On live television?" "Maybe someone should," James said quietly. "Because what you're doing right now, it's not right. Anyone can see that." Lorraine's face flushed deeper red. "I don't need you two telling me how to do my job. I've been doing this for years." "And in all those years," Sarah interjected, her voice stronger now, "have you ever treated a guest like this? Because I've never seen it. This is bullying, plain and simple." Miriam watched this exchange with something like sad fascination. Even the people on Lorraine's own panel were turning against her, recognizing how far over the line she'd stepped. Lorraine seemed to realize she was losing control of the entire situation. She turned back to Miriam, and there was something almost desperate in her eyes now. "You started this. Coming on here with your superior attitude, acting like you're better than everyone." "I did no such thing," Miriam replied calmly. "I sat down, I answered your first question honestly, and you immediately became hostile. Every single thing that's happened since has been your choice, Lorraine. Your decision to attack rather than converse. I wasn't attacking, Lorraine protested weakly. You told me I was bitter, out of touch, superior, irrelevant, and past my prime. Miriam listed each insult on her fingers. In what world is that not attacking someone? Lorraine had no answer. The studio had fallen into that heavy silence again, the kind where everyone is holding their breath, waiting to see what happens next. Miriam stood perfectly still. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried clearly to every microphone in the room. And there it is, the truth underneath all the pretense. You don't think I'm relevant. You think I'm past it. Finished. Done. So why invite me here at all, Lorraine? Why waste everyone's time? Or was the whole point to humiliate me? To put the old woman in her place? That's not, Lorraine started, but Miriam held up a hand. Actually, let me guess. You thought it would make great television, didn't you? Tear down someone with a bit of name recognition. Create some controversy. Get people talking. Because that's what matters now, isn't it? Not conversation, not enlightenment. Just drama for the sake of ratings. Lorraine's jaw worked, but no words came out. She looked like she wanted to deny it, but couldn't quite make herself do so. Sarah spoke up again, her voice thick with emotion. Miriam, I'm so sorry. This isn't what this show is supposed to be about. I know, dear, Miriam said gently. I can see that you're uncomfortable with this, that you know it's wrong. That means something. James added, we both tried to steer things in a different direction. But she wouldn't let you, Miriam finished for him. I understand. You're in a difficult position. You work here. You have to maintain relationships. I get it. But I don't work here. And I don't have to maintain anything with someone who's just told me I'm worthless on national television. Lorraine finally found her voice again. I never said worthless. Past your prime, desperately clinging to relevance. Miriam quoted back at her. What else could that possibly mean? You were telling me, in the cruelest way possible, that my time is over. That I should shuffle off into the sunset and stop bothering people with my existence. You're twisting my words, Lorraine accused. Am I? Miriam tilted her head. Then please enlighten me. What did you mean when you said I was past my prime and clinging to relevance? What positive interpretation should I take from that? Silence. Lorraine looked to Sarah and James for support, but both of them avoided her gaze. Exactly, Miriam said softly. You can't even defend your own words, because you know exactly what you were trying to do. You wanted to hurt me. Mission accomplished. Congratulations. Save it. I've heard enough. More than enough, actually. She slung her bag over her shoulder. You know what's truly sad about this? I came here liking you. I've watched your show. I've enjoyed it. I thought you were warm, kind, someone who genuinely cared about your guests. But that was an act, wasn't it? Just another role. And underneath it, you're just mean. I am not mean, Lorraine said, but she sounded uncertain now. Then what would you call what you've done here today? Miriam challenged. What word would you use to describe telling someone they're past their prime and should disappear? Because from where I'm standing, mean is being generous. Cruel might be more accurate. Sarah wiped at her eyes. Miriam, please know that not everyone here feels this way. Some of us... I know, Sarah. Thank you. But I can't stay. Surely you can see that. How could I possibly sit here for another minute and pretend this is acceptable? James added. If it helps at all, I think you're handling this with incredible grace. Miriam gave him a small, sad smile. That's kind of you to say. But grace doesn't mean accepting abuse. Grace means knowing when to walk away with your head held high. Lorraine's voice turned sharp again, though there was a tremor underneath it. So that's it? You're just going to storm off? I'm not storming anywhere, Miriam corrected. I'm leaving calmly and deliberately. There's a difference. Storming off would be emotional, reactive. This is a conscious choice based on a rational assessment of the situation. And the situation is that you've created an environment where I'm being attacked for sport. You just told a woman she's past her prime on live television, Miriam said flatly. You mocked her age, suggested she should retire, implied she's worthless. If that's not mean, then the word has lost all meaning. James stood up. Miriam, please, let's not end things like this. Miriam looked at him, and her expression softened slightly. James, you seem like a decent person. So does Sarah. I hope you both find yourselves working somewhere that values kindness eventually. Because this... She gestured around the studio. This isn't it. She turned back to Lorraine one last time. You wanted to make good television today. You wanted a moment people would remember. Congratulations. You got it, but not in the way you hoped. People will remember this as the day you revealed who you really are. And darling, it's not a pretty picture. Lorraine's face cycled through emotions. Anger, embarrassment, defiance. She settled on defiance. Fine, leave, run away, prove you can't handle real journalism. Real journalism? Miriam's eyebrows shot up. Is that what you think this is? Real journalism asks hard questions in service of truth. You asked cruel questions in service of your ego. There's a monumental difference. My ego? Lorraine sputtered. You're the one who can't take criticism. You're the one who thinks she's above being questioned. I welcome being questioned, Miriam said firmly. What I don't welcome is being insulted, and you seem unable to tell the difference between the two. That's not my failing. It's yours. Sarah stood up from her seat. Lorraine, please, just apologize. This has gotten completely out of hand. Why should I apologize? Lorraine demanded. For doing my job? Your job is to interview people, James said, his voice harder now. Not to tear them down. Not to use their age as a weapon. That's not journalism. That's just cruel. Lorraine looked between her two panelists, seeming to realize for the first time that she'd completely lost them. You're both going to side with her? Against me? We're not siding against you, Sarah said carefully. We're siding with basic decency. What you said to Miriam was wrong. Surely you can see that. I see that everyone's ganging up on me, Lorraine said, her voice rising. In my own studio. On my own show. No one's ganging up on you, Miriam said wearily. They're simply recognizing that you crossed a line. A very clear, very bright line. And instead of acknowledging it, you're doubling down, making yourself the victim. I'm not playing victim, Lorraine shot back. Aren't you? Miriam asked. Complaining that everyone's against you? Acting like you're being persecuted for just doing your job? That's victim language, Lorraine. And it's deeply ironic coming from someone who just spent 10 minutes victimizing a guest. She began walking toward the exit. The cameras followed her, unsure what else to do. Lorraine called after her, her voice echoing across the studio. You'll regret this. Walking out on a live show. It's professional suicide. Miriam paused at the studio door, but didn't turn around. The only thing I regret is wasting my morning. Goodbye, Lorraine. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, though I suspect even you don't know what that is. You can't just leave. Lorraine's voice was almost a shout now. Miriam looked back over her shoulder, and when she spoke, her voice was filled with quiet dignity. Yes, I can, and I am, because I still have enough self-respect to refuse to be treated like this, even if you've lost yours. Sarah sat frozen in her chair, tears actually forming in her eyes. James looked like he wanted to chase after Miriam. It's to apologize on behalf of everyone. But he stayed seated, trapped by the conventions of live television. Lorraine stood alone at the center of the set, surrounded by empty chairs and the weight of what had just happened. She opened her mouth, perhaps to call Miriam back, perhaps to defend herself to the cameras still rolling. but no words came out. The silence stretched, uncomfortable, heavy. Finally, Lorraine seemed to remember where she was. She turned to the camera, her professional mask sliding back into place, though it fit less perfectly now. "Well," she said, her voice brittle, "I suppose we'll take an early break. When we come back, we'll be discussing..." But no one was listening to what came next. The damage was done. The moment was captured. And somewhere, walking out of that studio into the fresh morning air, Miriam Margolyes held her head high, knowing that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to accept unacceptable treatment. Because respect isn't given freely to those who've earned it through decades of dedication and craft. Sometimes you have to demand it, and sometimes you have to walk away from those who refuse to offer it. In the studio, Lorraine tried to continue, tried to salvage what was left of the show. But everyone knew what had happened. The crew knew, the panel knew, and most importantly, everyone watching at home knew. They'd seen a beloved actress come in good faith and be met with hostility. They'd watched as question after question grew more pointed, more personal, more cruel, and they'd witnessed the moment when someone decided that no job, no appearance, no promotional opportunity was worth sacrificing their dignity. Sarah wiped her eyes discreetly. James stared at his notes without reading them. Lorraine spoke to the camera about upcoming segments, but her usual warmth was gone, replaced by something hollow and forced. The morning that had started so normally had become something else entirely. A cautionary tale about the cost of cruelty. A reminder that behind every public figure is a human being who deserves basic respect. And a demonstration that some people, no matter how long they've been in the public eye, will never forget their worth. Miriam was halfway down the corridor when a production assistant caught up to her. "Miss Margolyes, please, can we just..." "No," Miriam said gently but firmly. "We can't. I'm sorry you've been put in this position, but I'm done. Yeah, tell your producers I wish them well. But I won't be coming back. Not now. Not ever." The assistant nodded, understanding dawning in their eyes. They'd heard everything. They knew exactly what had transpired in that studio, and they couldn't really blame her. Back on set, the break was ending. Lorraine was touching up her makeup, her hands less steady than usual. Sarah and James exchanged glances, a silent conversation about what they'd just witnessed and what it meant. The cameras came back on. Lorraine smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome back," she said brightly. Too brightly. "Now, as you saw, Miriam Margolyes has decided to leave us. These things happen in live television. Let's move on to our next segment." But moving on wouldn't be that simple, because what had happened in those few minutes would ripple outward. People would talk. They would debate. They would take sides. And in the end, they would remember not the actress who walked out, but the host who drove her away with words designed to wound rather than words designed to illuminate. Miriam reached her car in the car park. She sat behind the wheel for a moment, breathing deeply. Her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally catching up with her. But underneath the trembling was something solid, something unshakable. Pride. Not the arrogant kind, but the kind that comes from knowing you stood up for yourself when it mattered. The kind that comes from refusing to be small just because someone else needs you to be. She started the engine and drove away, leaving behind a studio full of people who were just beginning to realize what they'd witnessed. Not just a dramatic walkout, a sanctuary, but a masterclass in dignity, a lesson in knowing your worth, and a reminder that sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is a simple one. I will not accept this. And with those unspoken words echoing in her heart, Miriam Margolyes drove into the rest of her day, her dignity intact, her self-respect uncompromised, and her head held impossibly high. Behind her, in that studio, the show went on. But it would never be quite the same, because everyone there now knew that their host was capable of cruelty. And that knowledge, once gained, cannot be forgotten. The story of what happened would spread. It would be discussed in green rooms and production meetings. It would become an example of what not to do, how not to treat a guest, what line should never be crossed. But for Miriam, it was already becoming part of the past. An unpleasant moment in a long and storied career, a reminder that even now, even after everything she'd achieved, there were still battles to fight, still moments where she needed to stand firm. And stand firm she had, not with anger or vengeance, but with clarity, with purpose, with the quiet certainty of someone who knows exactly who they are and refuses to pretend otherwise. The morning sun was bright as she drove through the city. Life continued around her. People going about their days, unaware of the small drama that had just unfolded in a television studio across town. But those who had watched it live would remember. They would remember the moment a respected actress said enough, the moment dignity won over convenience, the moment someone showed that it's never too late to demand respect, regardless of age, regardless of circumstance, regardless of who thinks they have the power. Because real power isn't in a hosting chair or a television contract. Real power is knowing when to stay and when to leave. Knowing what you will tolerate and what you won't. Knowing that your worth isn't determined by someone else's opinion of you. And on that bright morning, in that moment of decision, Miriam Margolyes had reminded everyone watching of a simple but profound truth. You teach people how to treat you. And sometimes, the most important lesson you can teach is that you simply won't be treated badly. Not by anyone. Not for anything. Not ever.